Hello everyone. In this section we're going to cover display groups. Display groups are a system in Corona that allows you to put multiple images within one grouping, allowing you to change them all together in similar formats. So what we're going to go ahead and do is in your main.lua file in the display groups folder, I want you to create a test group to display.new group. And this is similar to the other display object calls. You are creating an object, but this doesn't actually have any image on its own. It's just a container. So what we're going to do is we're going to create some objects to put in that group. So let's go ahead and create a test circle. And give it X, Y, and a radius. Let's go ahead and move it over a little. Alright, so now we have a circle, radius of 40 at 80 and 60 X and Y. So let's go ahead and put that in our group. So what we do is test group, insert, and then the object you're putting into the group. So now the circle is within this test group, and we'll see that if we change test group's location by moving it, the circle will move with it. Because now the circle has two locations. It has its world space and its local space. So the circle is at 80, 60 within the group, and the group is 120 pixels over to the side on the X coordinate. So we can also give this a Y location. And now you'll see the circle's down here. And if we set the circle to 0, 0, it moves slightly. So now the circle is at 0, 0 within the group, but the group itself is at 120, 200, which puts the circle right here. So to give another example, let's go ahead and create an image here. We'll do test image. And just like the previous chapters, I've provided an image in the folder. If you'd like, you can use it or bring in your own. So now we have this smiley face. And let's go ahead and insert that as well into our group. So we're going to do this after the circle. So test group, insert, test image. Now you'll see this is now visible, but the circle is not. The reason being is that when you insert things into a group, the order in which they're inserted is the draw order within the group. So because the image was inserted after the circle, the image will be on top. Now if we were to move this line to be before the circle, you'll see the circle is now on top of the image because it was added second. So the way to think of this is you can use an example of a piece of paper. So if you draw one thing on a piece of paper, then draw something on top of it, that will be visible. That's what a group is. It's very similar to a specific sheet of paper, and the order in which you draw things into that sheet of paper is the order that they show up. So we'll also see here we could move the image. Let's give it a location. And now it's offset from the circle because it has a location within the group space that is different from 0, 0. So now the image is over 140, 100 from the circle, and they're both 120, 200 because of the group. So that's the basics of groups, motions. Also want to show you the other way to insert an object. Instead of doing this insert line of code, you can actually just give the name of the group in any basic display object type. So new circle, new rectangle, new line, new image, anything like that. If you provide the name of the group first before the other parameters, it automatically inserts it into that group. Now we'll see here that as before, the circle is on top because it's added second. But if we were to put this insert to be before the image, then the image will be on top. So that's the basics of inserting objects into a group. Let's go ahead and take a look at some of the basic functionalities you have of a group. Just like any display image, a group has rotation, it has scale, it has X and Y. So you can change a group in the same way that you could change an image as we went over in the previous section. So if we do test group scale, we will see that now everything is scaled twice the size. But if we were to, let's say, scale the image to half of its scale, 50%, we'll see the image is now actually the original size. because we're scaling it to 50% by itself, then we're scaling the group up by 200%, which equals it out to its original size. So see here, it's the original size. It is in a slightly different location though, because the group is scaling it out, so the group's XY coordinates have stretched. So that's an example of scaling. Let's go ahead and look at rotation. So if we put this at rotation of 180, we'll see that everything's upside down now. And same as before, if we were to rotate the image itself inside the group, the image will now be right side up because it's being rotated twice, once by the group and once by its own information. So as you can see, groups are pretty useful for putting a large section of things together. I'll make a quick example here by making a large set of circles. We're going to go ahead and make a set of 6 circles. And then we're going to move them all to different locations to see how they react to being in the group. So what I'm going to do is give each circle a random X and Y location. And once we've done that, then we're going to insert each one into that group and see what happens when we have a whole set of circles. So now we have a group of circles all over the place. Each time we save, it'll rerun these randoms, which means they'll be in different places each time. So now we have a whole set of circles here. Now we can move these circles independent of each other just by giving the specific location. Of course, we don't have a reference to each one now because we're just using circle for each of the 6 that we're creating here. But what we can do is we can actually access each one in the array that is the test group. So test group 1 is the first circle we created, which is actually this test circle here. So if we put its X to 600, we'll now see we have a circle up in this top right corner because we've moved this by its location using its reference in the group. So we could do test group number 4, put its Y to 700, and now we should have one down here, as you can see, because we moved the Y location of the 4th circle, the 4th object in test group to 700, puts it over here. Let's try giving one a color, make one stand out. Let's make number 3 be the color red. So now we have a red circle, and it's the 3rd circle, so we actually have something on top of it because one of the later circles happened to be nearby, and it was drawn after, so it is overlapping the red circle. Now of course we could do this where we could set each circle to a different color to figure out which ones they are, but as they are all in the group, we can also move them and rotate them as we see fit. So we're going to go over this later in one of the upcoming sections, but I'm going to make them transition, which makes them all move. But rather than having each one move, I'm going to have the group itself move its location over the course of 2 seconds. So you'll see here all of the circles are moving because the group itself is moving. So if we were to do something like this, and at the same time we could do a transition of moving circle number 1, move its X to 600, we will see that all of our circles will still be moving down, but one circle will also be moving to the right. And that circle's moving to the right because we're doing a transition on test group image 1, and this transition is just moving the full group itself. So those are some basic examples of how a group can have both its individual data per object as well as the group's information itself. Next we're going to take a look at removing objects from a group as well as looping through and removing every object. All of these examples are in the final example file, in the folder, so you can take a look at some basic examples of all these items. So what we're going to do now is we're going to print testgroup.numChildren. .numChildren is a variable that each group stores of how many objects are within it. So right now you'll see we have a print of 7. And that's because we're creating one circle here and then 6 circles in this for loop. So we have 7 circles being created. They're all within test group. So it has 7 children within that group. So what we could do with that information is we could loop from 1 to testgroup.numChildren 2. And what this is going to do is it's going to loop n from 1 to however many children there are, in this case 7. We'll see it'll print 1 through 7. And now with this information we could do various things such as set the location of each one to itself plus, let's go with 50. So now every circle is going to move over 50 pixels from where it originally had started. So this is a good example of being able to iterate over items in a group. Now you're going to need to do this if you want to remove everything from the group as well. So let's say, for instance, we want to remove all these circles from the screen. What we actually need to do is start on the last one, iterate to the first object in a negative order. So now what we're doing is we're starting on object 7, going to object 1 in the direction of a negative, and we're adding to each one. Now this is important, and you're going to need to do this to remove objects. So to remove an object, it's remove self, and that removes it from the screen. This is the standard function for any object to remove it, whether it's in a group or not. This is just a way to go through a group and remove every object in the group. So if we wanted to remove just a single one, we could do testgroup1 remove self. And we'll see that this original circle, the one that was in the top corner, is now being removed. So here it is, but now we give it to order to remove self, and it's no longer there. So this is actually taking that out. Now if we were to print numChildren again, you'll see that it goes from 7 to 6 because we've removed number 1. This is why we need to start on the last one and go backwards when we're removing objects, because if we started on 1 and went to 7, as soon as we remove 1, there's no longer a number 7 because it's been removed. So we have to start on number 7 and work our way down. So that covers the basics of a display group. We'll be using these a lot more often later on in our later chapters dealing with making a game and a basic app in Corona. In the next section, we're going to cover events and listeners.